Good morning and welcome to Autism Mama Bear Talk. Today we have a Dream Team Hour again. We had a lot of requests from you guys to bring those amazing men to my show again so they can share their experience, their knowledge, their insight on the autism spectrum, how it is to live with autism, how it is to work with autism, how it is to be amazing and thrive career-wise and just in general how to be awesome having autism. So let me bring my guest back. Oh, 1 second. There we go. I believe we're all. There you go. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for coming again to my Dream Team Hour. It's going to be a great show. Today we're going to talk about employment. That's a big issue because many people with autism or on the autism spectrum, even with Asperger's, which is the high functioning end of spectrum, they are actually struggling with employment. It's a very stressful transition for a young man, for a young woman. So I want all your wisdom, knowledge, experience. Go ahead. Shall we start with Tom?
Well, thank you so much for having me again, Autism Mama Bear or Ula, whichever you might prefer at this point.
My pleasure.
So for viewers that may not have seen or heard me speak before, I'm Tom Iland and I live in Los Angeles. I'm 34 years old. I have autism and I have my many stories of employment. I'm a certified public accountant out here in California. Basically, I had the dream of being George Lucas's accountant because I'm good with numbers and I love Star Wars. And I brought this dream to my mother's attention and she gave me a reality check, which was probably the biggest gift she could have given me at that point. She said, you want to be George Lucas's accountant? You have to go to these classes, pass these tests, go to work in these jobs. And I'm like, all right, I'll do that. So I made it happen, getting my license, and I interned at Disney, which later acquired Lucasfilm. So retroactively and indirectly, I accomplished my goal. But while I was doing all this accounting, I realized I wasn't happy. Yes, I had a consistent paycheck. Yes, I had benefits, but I didn't feel like I was really where I belonged. And 2.5 years ago, I said goodbye to my accounting career, a full-time permanent job with benefits, and I now share my story with the world of what I've learned along the way, particularly with employment and social aspects and other parts of autism that people need to hear about. And in employment, I've discovered that there are a lot of moving parts. There's getting a job and then there's keeping a job. And people with autism tend to have difficulty with both, particularly the latter, and keeping that job, in that they have difficulty maintaining a conversation or aren't reading the social cues or their environment or may not understand the tasks that are given to them. And as a result, they get fired or maybe not even hired at all. So what I'm doing is sharing my secrets to success, and I'll talk a little bit about those over the course of this interview. So people with autism can have jobs, make a difference, and feel like they're really contributing to their society.
That's awesome. And I really admire your drive. You know, you don't take no for an answer. You expanded your career, not only accounting. I mean, you have always this backup in case something goes wrong, but you know what I mean? You pursued your dreams. You discovered your talent. You discovered your skills, where your strongest points are, and you went for it. So together with your mom, I think your mom is an amazing, encouraging lady. She's like your best PR as well, public relations. And together you created this amazing force, this team that just goes for it, and the word is spread. You're teaching, you're educating other people, you're educating other parents, and also like police force. I mean, that's mind-blowing.
It is. And ever since I got diagnosed at the age of 13 in 1996, I have been giving talks to people about autism. It started with police officers. My mother was present. She's a past president of the Autism Society of Los Angeles. LAPD knocked on her door one day saying, we need more education on autism. Can you train us? And she said, sure. Years later, she's modified and really evolved in this particular training. It's called Experience Autism. Experience Autism. It is the only evidence-based police training on autism in the United States.
Wow.
They have PhD candidates studying the effects of police and how they improved in their performance with respect to autism, and they found it was effective. Police had better empathy for people with autism. They felt more confidence that they could interact with someone with autism out in the field, and no other police training on autism does that. Oh, it looks like Tucker beat me to the punch. I have a book that my mother and I have written, and it's there and
cool.
Come to life. And if the name of the game is employment today, we talk about in this book, my mother and I, how young people can find their niche, where they really fit in, where they're really good, and where they belong, so they can get what my goal was when I was younger: permanent, gainful employment with benefits. Permanent, gainful employment with benefits was one of my goals, and continues to be now that I've left accounting.
I want you to elaborate on that after we hear from Tucker, because Tucker Bearden is another great, amazing young person. I admire him so much for what he does and how he helps others overcome their fears and even addictions. I mean, he's inspiring the world, truly. Tucker Bearden, inspiring the world. It's so true. I love his show. I was privileged to be on one of his episodes on Stay Humble, Hustle Hard. Hustle Hard. Now it's going to be live with Tucker Bearden. And he is basically bringing all those amazing individuals and showing how they hustle, staying humble. And Tucker, I don't want to butcher your show. Please tell us about your career, your employment, and your show, and just what you're doing.
All right, well, thank you so very much for having me on the show to begin with. I am a huge fan of Tom, if you cannot tell. I have his book. I've actually read it 3 times so far. It has helped me astronomically. The book I'm actually reading as of now is Asperger's on the Job, and it's a really, really good book, and it's perfect for this discussion that we're talking about, because in this book it actually discusses how people with Asperger's, statistically speaking, 85% of people who have Asperger's are unemployed. And the reason for that is due to hypersensitivity and sensory overload, as well as a few other things that I'll cover. And that is when you're in the work. Go ahead. I thought you said something. Sorry, my bad. Anyway, when you're in the workplace, one of the things that people do that and this is not just Asperger's, this is a lot of people on the spectrum are this way. And I'm sure, I know from reading in the book, Tom will fill me on this, and that is they enjoy what's known as small talk. And small talk is this evil creation that people created back when the languages were created, that's people think that people do these days, and it's normal. And I say evil as a joke, because those of us on the spectrum, especially with Asperger's in general, small talk is very hard. It's very, very hard. If I go to work somewhere, besides all the sensory overload problems that are going on, people, when you're the new guy, people want to know who you are. They want to chat with you. They want to get to know you. They want to talk about sports and the weather and whatever it is normal people talk about. And I'm just not. That is so hard to do. That small talk is hard to do, and a lot of times, and 99% of the time, what happens is due to our inability to socialize skillfully, we end up becoming the target of on-the-job bullying. So we don't want to interact. We want to get our job done and we want to go home. And most of us are perfectionists. So we want to focus on our job, and you distracting us, so talking about how this guy can't kick a football and all that kind of stuff. It distracts us from doing our job correctly, so we get fired for for lack of doing our job well. When generally in the interview, the person with that's on the spectrum, they give an amazing interview or a horrible interview, one of the two. They either have a god awful time trying to get a job, or it's really easy to get a job and they have a god awful time trying to keep it. I'm that one. I'm the one that I can come in there, I can kill the interview, I can get it going, I get them hyped, get them going, and then I get in there, and it's like there's all these people, and the subject isn't work anymore. And then you combine that with the fact that people on the spectrum work best in their niche. So if the person is not genuinely doesn't have an unalloyed connection with what it is they're doing, if they're doing it for money, people on the spectrum cannot last. We just don't. I don't want to speak for everybody, because there are those out there who can do that, who can overcome that and go in there and just do it for the money. But most of us, when we go in there, like if for instance, I got a job at a telemarketing company selling $10,000 windows, and though I could make sales on the phone, I had no passion for it. There was no purpose. I wasn't making a difference. It didn't matter. So I ended up having to quit because it'll literally drive you nuts. That's why I ended up working with thoroughbred racehorses, because people on the spectrum are astronomically more in tune with their sixth sense with animals than other people are naturally. So, like with animals, I had a connection. I could feel what they feel. With people, I can't feel the emotions that you're feeling. I don't connect with you on that level. It's much harder. But like, see, for him, Tom, he has that dog. The dog and Tom both have what's called a heart field. Yes. Okay? And your heart field is energy being emitted from your body, and the magnetic pulses that actually emit from your body can match each other's frequency and intertwine with each other, and if you're lucky, cause what's called quantum entanglement. And then whenever you ever have someone that you've like, man, I really need to call this person, or God, something's not right, and then you call and they're like, man, I'm so glad you called me, man, you'll never believe what happened. Well, it's due to entanglement, and personally, I connect with animals. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to ramble. I know I do that.
No. That's awesome. And I get the same thing when I wake up in the middle of the night, and also my father-in-law, he tells me that sometimes he wakes up at 3 a.m. and he cannot stop thinking about my son, Michael, worried about him running away and being in danger. So he just starts praying, and then he goes back to sleep more calm. So sometimes I believe that God is waking us up, shaking us up, putting the thought of someone that we haven't thought in a long time, that we have to make a call, or we have to say a prayer for that person, or, just reach out, because this energy is going, everything has a purpose. Mm-hmm.
Yes. That connection is so deep that I know that with horses, me personally, with horses, I can tell you where an animal is hurting, and when the vet comes, they say, well, how do you know they're hurting there? Mm-hmm. And I say, I don't know. They told me. And they're like, well, what do you mean they told you? You can feel it.
You're like a cross between the good doctor and the horse whisperer.
Yeah, there you go. Something like that. Yeah. I ended up watching The Good Doctor, by the way. You told me about The Good Doctor last time we were on Autism Mama Bear, and I had to stop watching it because I don't watch TV, and I ended up binge watching.
It's good, right?
It's addicting.
Yes, it is.
I was like, no, Tom, why?
So, guys, Thanks so much for telling me about your experience with employment. And I know, Tucker, you have done a lot of little jobs here and there, and you had a lot of traumatic experiences as well. But now let's talk about the positive, about your current career and what you're trying to do. I know that sometimes putting priorities first and trying to make a difference in a world doesn't mean that you will make huge bills, huge dollars at first, but it will come. I mean, the benefits will come later on. We're talking about your priorities, what you're trying to do with your show, and please tell us about your show a little bit more.
Okay. Well, my show is Stay Humble, Hustle Hard Live with Tucker Bearden. It's where I interview the men and women building this country one business at a time, so all of us can learn how to get our hustle on. You know, every person has a message. And every message has a purpose. On Stay Humble, Hustle Hard Live, that message gets heard. It gives people an opportunity to not only share their business and their product, their hustle with the world, but it gives them an opportunity to share their message with the world. Because that is the most important question that I ask each and every person on every single episode. And the answers you get, they are truly life-changing, and that is, if you only had 5 minutes to live, the entire world could hear you speak, what would be your message to the world? And that is my favorite question to ask anybody, anywhere I go. I even ask people in restaurants sometimes, and they're like, who is this guy, and why is he asking me this profound question?
Good. Let's hear from Tucker Bearden. If you had 5 minutes to live, what would be your message for the world?
To be the blessing for others, and know that you'll live within blessings. Your darkest and your hardest times in your life do nothing but prepare you for the greatness that runs through your veins. Each and every person was put on this earth to share something with the world, because it is my honest belief that if a person obtains knowledge capable of improving the lives of others, it is a raw act of selfishness to withhold that information from the world. We are all designed to do great things. We are all designed to benefit this world in some way, shape, form, or fashion, but it is up to each and every individual to take that time and invest it into the progression of not only themselves, but their progression towards causing a generational change that will inspire others to inspire others. That is my message to the world.
That's awesome. Tom, what would be your message if you had 5 minutes to live?
Well, I won't take up the whole 5 minutes, but and this is a little bit of a way that I'm in an organization called Toastmasters, and every year around the world they have an international speech contest. And it's 5 to 7 minutes on what you want to tell the world, and then they crown the world champion public speaking. Oh, wow. So if I had to be on that stage, or if I had 5 minutes to live, what I would tell the world is summarized by my mantra, which is know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. That was the basis for the book that my mother and I wrote, because when you know what you're good at and where you can improve, you'll be able to work on both and become your best self. When you realize that you are worthy and capable of love, and it starts with you. If you just sit back waiting for validation and love, it's not going to happen. You are the one that realizes you have a lot going for you, and then you start to attract the goodness that you want in your life. And then being yourself. That means not living your life to please others, but being open to what others have to say, their opinions, their suggestions, their considerations, so you can make the best decision possible that's best for you while still living the life that you want to live. And this is very common in people with autism. That's the main audience I want to appeal to, but my message can really apply to anybody, because when you know yourself, love yourself, and be yourself, you're going to be your best self and be able to live the life that you want. And that life doesn't come to you. It's up to you to come to life. That's why we named the book Come to Life, and big fan there. And when it comes to employment, and we'll keep this 5 minute message more or less going here, one of the things we discuss in Come to Life is about finding your niche. When we release young people into the wild or off to college, it's like, go find yourself, go find out what you're good at. Well, when people are in college, it's like being dropped into a game in the middle of it without being explained the rules, and it's like you have to adapt.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's causing a lot of young people to really crash and burn or be undecided in their major for so many years, or be really up a creek without a paddle because they're in a college where they don't fit in. They're not sure why they're there. They don't belong. They don't know what college courses they should be majoring in or taking. So we need to take a step back and ask them the right questions. Who are you? What do you want? What are you good at? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Yes, there will be some I don't knows at first, but that's why we have to explore their options. And if they don't know what their options are, they're going to say, I don't know. So start to think about their talents, what their skills, their abilities, what comes naturally to them, and then go from there. And mind you, it has to be about what the young person wants, because when they say, I don't know, and then the parents or the teachers or the therapists start making decisions for them or think, oh, you're good with numbers, let's make you into a mathematician. And the young person never raises their hand, no, that's not what I want. Or can we look at something else? Then they start to live a life that is not theirs, that they don't feel right in, or in a place where they don't want to be. And that's what's causing, at least in my opinion, a lot of the rejection, the anxiety, the depression, the failure, the hopelessness, all of those poor feelings and results that people with autism are experiencing is because they are living a life that is not theirs, that they don't want. For whatever reason, they can't say, no, thank you, or I don't want this. Maybe they put their trust in their parents or their caregivers, think my parents or my caregiver will fight my battles for me, I'll just leave it to them. No, it is up to you to put yourself in the driver's seat and drive your life forward. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to employment, once we find out what comes naturally to you, while being realistic as well, like my mother gave me that reality check, you want to be George Lucas's accountant, here's what you have to do. Because as I found out growing up in college, I love Star Wars, but there's no Star Wars specialist in the wanted ads or online job postings. There are no 40 or 50-year-old video game designers that I know of anyway. So I needed to have a realistic job that would last the long term, have longevity that people would always have over the course of time, because the times, they are a-changing. And as we discover that jobs can be outsourced, they can be put online, our young people need to be in a trade, in a job, in a place where they can be in the rest of their lives. And mind you, they don't have to be in the same job their entire life. Their career can change, and they can discover more things about themselves and what they're good at, what comes naturally to them. But at the very least, the young people need to be out there. Come to life. You need to get out there, get their feet wet, find out what's working and what's not, and then make better decisions so they can take their life to the next level and be their best self. Is that 5 minutes?
Yeah,
more or less.
Awesome.
That's beautiful. I want to add something on there too. I noticed one of the things that he was peeking at in there is your purpose, and because one of the things about this is not just people on the spectrum. We are just the ones that people that it's one of the first things people notice about somebody on the spectrum, and that is that we have very specific niches, or niche, however you want to say it. But everyone has their niche, regardless of whether they're on the spectrum or not. And what I always say, what I figured out is that because I used to be very depressed, I figured out that living in your past outside of your purpose causes depression. Living in the future outside of the present is what causes anxiety. So like for me, working with horses, I thought that was my passion because I love horses. But then I realized very quickly that no matter how much that's your passion, there's no money to be made generally working with horses. It doesn't matter what industry you get into. If you don't have $5 million to start with, you cannot get in the horse industry and really do anything. So I became a public speaker. just like Tom, and that's where me and Tom share that connection as well. And that's one of the reasons that I'm such a big fan, is because like anybody who spoke on more stages than me, or anybody who's willing to stand up and share their message, I look up to. Like those are the people I consider to be my idols. And I found my passion on the stage. Tom was actually there the very first time I ever got to speak on stage in Las Vegas at the Authority Makers Boot Camp. And you can ask him, when I came off stage, talk about emotional. Like it was if I felt like I had been born again. Like I truly got to live within my purpose. And ever since then, I'm writing speeches every day. I'm working on the Power of We Symposium event that I'll be speaking at in September. My depression got pushed away because I finally get to live within my purpose. And I think that's something that each and every person should take from. If you don't take anything from all of this that we're doing, like me, Tom, Ula, everybody that's out there trying to motivate, inspire, and push people to take life to the next level, if you don't take anything out of all of that, just take this, and that is that if you live within your purpose, when you are truly living within your purpose, you get access to what's known as joy. And that is, people say, well, I'm happy. No, there's a difference in happiness and joy. Mm-hmm. A big difference. And I hope that everybody can understand that there are people out there telling you, okay, do what you love and the money will come. And that's very true. But you have to have money in the meanwhile. So do what works, but work towards what you love, and while doing what works. Like me personally, I love public speaking. I love to speak to people and look into the audience and see someone's eyes light up because they're entangled in what you're saying, and they can feel the power in your words. And you know in that moment, that split second, that you became that spark in the darkness for that person.
Right.
You were able to light the way for them and change their view and their mindset. I'm not going to go rambling again because I'm terrible about that. But I just wanted to add that in there, and that is work within your purpose, whether you're on or off the spectrum, and you can't go wrong.
That's so true. And both of you, I believe, found your purpose, and you are pursuing your dreams, and that's amazing. But that brings me to another subject, which is being assertive, because I believe that especially people on the spectrum, they have difficulty reading social cues, and that can also lead to not being assertive enough, and they would always say yes just because they don't know how to say no, and people may take advantage of you guys and of other people. So I want to talk about the art of assertiveness. And so who would like to start? What it means for you to be assertive?
All right, so I'll go into that. And another term for what you're talking about, reading context or knowing the rules or the laws in the workplace, these are what are known as soft skills. You have hard skills like the job of the trade or what you do on the job. Then you have the soft skills, for instance, how to talk with management, how to disagree appropriately, how to not be the smelly person in the office. And that, unfortunately, is a lot of our young people not so aware of their hygiene at any given time. But what I'm getting at is when these skills need to be taught to young people. Because when I was in high school, I had to be taught about social skills explicitly and directly, and all those nonverbal communication elements like eye contact, posture, tone of voice, proximity, how close or how far you stand next to somebody. So people with autism need to be taught these things if they're going to be in a workplace, because these skills can be generalized across various jobs. We talk about finding your niche, having such special interests and being focused on one particular trade. Soft skills can apply to many jobs across the board. And what my mother and I have just done here in Santa Clarita, where we live, we just trained 10 young men with autism. We call it a cohort of students, how to apply soft skills in a special type of machinery position. This is called computer numerical control, or CNC machines, computer numerical control. What they're finding in what's called the Uniquely Abled Academy, or UAA, the Uniquely Abled Academy, is that people with autism have a great eye for detail. They love the repetitive tasks. They're really good at operating computers or playing the video games, so computers come naturally to them. What the UAA does with CNC machines is using people with autism to make parts that are used in airplanes and on ships and in engines.
Wow.
And it comes really naturally to people with autism being able to apply these skills with computers and the eye for detail and such. But what's going to mean the difference between them keeping that job and flourishing and being fired for something getting out of context is the soft skills. So if they say the wrong thing to a manager, if they misinterpret a task or some other sexual harassment in particular. We live in a see something, say something society. Any first moment of awkwardness, HR is called in, and when the young person can't fend for themselves or doesn't disclose their disability in an appropriate time or manner, they're getting the boot. Out on the streets, back to square one, when they could have been doing so well, one situation out of context could undo everything. Those soft skills, or teaching the soft skills, that's what's missing in a lot of young people's lives, and why it is so important that they be explicitly taught. And yes, there are many scenarios. You may not think of all of them, but maybe you can think of a few. Like, what's a problematic behavior a young person does? Do they like to stand too close, or do they tell inappropriate jokes, or do they say things that people feel kind of uncomfortable with? Those have to be addressed before this person can be employed, or if you want this person to have permanent gainful employment benefits.
That's brilliant. Tom, I mean, you touched on everything that I was going to ask you about. So, but what about Tucker? Tucker, how was your experience with, assertiveness and the soft skills during your employment?
It's probably one of my biggest challenges, because when I was younger, I was a yes man, because just like many people on the spectrum, I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to socialize, but I wanted friends and I wanted to be part of something. So in order to do that, if you were like, it didn't matter. All you had to do was ask me to do something in a tone that made me think you were going to be my friend if I did it, and I would do it. And I laugh about that, but it's really, really, really bad. It was in school. It was the cause of most of my issues, was because people would come, I know this sounds absolutely ridiculous, but there was even a situation where a group of guys had surrounded me, and they were acting like they all liked me, and they were laughing and having a good time. And they actually told me to start hitting myself. This is when I was younger, and I thought that if I did it, then they would be my friend, and I did, and I ended up actually fracturing my nose, hurting myself, because they were telling me to do it, and I was under the impression that, well, this is how you make friends. You do what they want you to do. And that translated into the workplace, but in the workplace it got dangerous, because as I got older, I was still a yes man, and I still have a problem with it today. Like my first time ever going to a big city was Vegas, in Las Vegas. I had never been to somewhere like that, and I got approached for the first time by the drug addicts that were trying to get money, and I wasn't aware that you don't give them money. And Lauren Harris was there, and Michael Kyra and Joshua T. Berglund, and they're all like practically slapping my hand, I mean, I had people coming up to me, like, for instance, there was a little Mexican woman, and she come up to me with this bracelet, like, ambushed me. I didn't know, I don't know, I swear she's a magician. She came out of nowhere, and she's like, oh, you take this, and you only $10 tip, only $10, only $10. Oh, no. And I'm like, no, I'm good. And she had me cornered, literally. Like I was a dog in a corner, and I'm just like freaking out. I'm like, get away. Like, and she's sitting there and she pushes this thing onto me, and Lauren Harris comes running up, and he's like, no, pulls it off and all this. And I wanted to tell her, I'm trying to be polite and figure out how to say, this is not what I want. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to do this right now. Stop. Like, and it builds up, and in the workplace it becomes dangerous because people will ask you to do something, and well, okay, I get paid to do what they want me to do. So you think, well, I'm going to do it, but in your mind, okay, this is very uncomfortable for me. And in the workplace, a lot of times people are trained on sexual harassment. Like, business owners are trained on how to properly deal with people in the workplace so that they don't get charged with sexual harassment and people don't think something's going on or whatever. But very rarely, if ever, are they trained with in dealing with people on the spectrum, because you have to look at, and I think that should be a requirement now, because if you look at the time frame as to the diagnosis and the amount of people with autism now in comparison to just 10 or 15 years ago, there's a huge difference. And people say, well, it's just a difference in the skill of diagnosing. We're better at diagnosing now. No, it's not. That has very little to do with it. There are more people with autism now than there were back then. So it's inevitable that someone with autism is going to, at some point, need a job, and you are more than likely, you might be that person. At some point, you're going to get them, and you got to know how to deal with them. Because here's the thing: an employer can make very small changes to help out and to make the environment more comfortable for somebody on the spectrum. And they say, well, why would I make these changes for them when I don't make them for someone else? Well, for one, like I said, you can't get around hiring someone with autism, because most of the time you can't even tell they have it until certain situations arise. But the benefits that person has over a neurotypical, I'm not being arrogant when I say that, but there are certain gifts that people on the spectrum have that people off of the spectrum have to work a lot harder to get to that level of skill in that specific thing. Like for instance, Tom, I don't know a lot about Star Wars, but I promise you, if a guy were to walk in right now with a bag with $1 million in it, and he says, I have 100 trivia questions, and if you can answer every one of them correctly, I'll give you $1 million, you have one phone call. You know who I'm calling?
Yes.
It ain't gonna. So it's these specific things, and me in the workplace, like one of the things that I did and I still do. I'm unemployed now because I cannot keep a job. The only thing I can do now is I'm doing my podcast, and I'm trying to build Facebook ads. I build Facebook ads for people on Facebook and drive people to their page and stuff like. People wonder how I have 20,000 followers. Well, it wasn't all organic. I know how to run ads. But anyway, I go into a workplace, and there's all these people, and they're doing all these intricate little things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I try to, I wear headphones. I wear silencing headphones, so I can't hear them. Because if I don't have it on, I'll remove the clocks off the wall. I will, if there's a TV in the room that is plugged in and turned on and doesn't have volume, say it's playing something, I will unplug the TV because I can't handle certain noises. But when people, your boss in particularly, comes in and they see you, you're doing something, and say you get distracted because someone won't leave you alone, then you mess up on your work, and when your boss comes in and they're like, well, why did you do this and did and you're just like, and you're just like, and I snap, like, and I hurt people, like, and it's hard, like, I mean, people, I got fired from a farm because my boss, like, he had a tendency to do this, put his finger near my face, and not only is face touching not okay at all, like, that will make me snap like a twig, but you combine that with telling me what I'm wrong, and are you stupid? What is wrong with you? Why can't you just this and that? Like, why don't you just do what everybody else does? Like this, that, and other, and they have no comprehension of the challenges that we have, and then people get hurt. I mean, people, like, it's not just us getting emotionally hurt. People on the spectrum, if you push us too far, we snap. And when we snap, it's usually a lot more dangerous than when a neurotypical gets agitated. And I'm not saying that to scare people, especially in the workplace. I'm saying that to share the extreme understanding that the extreme situation that has to be understood, and there's these little bitty things that people can adjust for that individual, just small tiny things that make their life easier, and they will get so much work done. And they will get, like, for instance, on the farm I was one guy taking care of 42 head of horses, cleaning stalls every day, doctoring up wounds, going and catching babies out of the and giving them medicine, birthing and breeding horses on a daily basis. It's just me, but I did a good job because it was my space, my area, my little bubble. And I got to the point where I would mess up on my job if someone that wasn't supposed to be there or doesn't come there normally, like each day it's me by myself, well, then some random new person drives up and they're wanting to chit chat or look for the boss or this, that, and another, and I'm just like, he's over there, just, I ended up hurting my boss because he's doing this, and that's. So that's something that employers, that's the great thing about, both of these books, Tom's book, Coming to Life, and this book, Asperger's on the Job, like, that's what both of these books are designed to do, is to open up people's eyes. And like Tom's book, in there, he teaches you how to find your gift, your purpose, and truly come to life, like, and actually open up to the world and do what you were meant to do. While this Asperger's on the Job, it's focused towards employees, but it's more towards the employer. And I believe that if employers were to follow the route of Steve Jobs, they could change the world, because Steve Jobs was infamous for that. He was known at one point for not hiring you if you were not on the spectrum. Like, he wouldn't hire a neurotypical. And you look what he did. What much more does someone need to say?
And I've got so many areas where I want to chime in. I'll start with the training employers and training employees, and then I'll talk a little bit about those companies that are focused on hiring people with autism and why. But I've found over the years that employers like it, and this ties into my mantra, know yourself. When you know what you do well and where you can improve, and you've already addressed those areas for improvement, or you have an accommodation, preferably a low to no cost accommodation. Employers love that. You're not going to have to move mountains if you get employed there. They're going to respect you more for that and increase your likelihood of getting hired. For example, I only disclosed in an interview maybe in recent memory once, and it was technically a second interview. They brought me back for a second interview. I explained, and the manager, the HR director that I interviewed with, had a nephew with autism. She saw in my resume that I work with people with autism. She mentioned her nephew has autism. Well, during the second interview, I mentioned to her, you have a nephew that has autism? Well, I have autism. And if things do go south on the job, I have a job coach that can be brought in at no cost to you or the company, and we can go from there. So she respected that I did my research, my homework, and that I had the support for my potential problems in place, and I ended up getting that job. Now, mind you, that was the last accounting job I had, and that job coach did get called in for some communication snafus. But what I'm getting at is we come to the interview room and we have those areas where we want to get accommodations, and employers might think special treatment. But if our young people do their homework, find out what is working for them or where they can improve, and have accommodations in place for the employer so the employer doesn't have to do the work finding those accommodations, that's going to increase the likelihood of a young person with autism getting hired. Just dropping in their laps like, what are you going to do about it? It's not going to work. Our young people need to do their self-discovery process, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and then discover what kind of assistance ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, required if need be, so that they can succeed in that workplace. Now, that brings me into companies that work well with people with autism. Mentioned Steve Jobs. Well, Bill Gates up at Microsoft, it's believed he's on the spectrum. And when I was told he has autism or might have autism at a young age, I'm like, well, I'm going to have autism like Bill Gates has it. And that set the tone for the rest of my life.
Right.
But that eye for detail I mentioned with the CNC machines and the Uniquely Abled Academy, an eye for detail is what companies like Microsoft and SAP, the German-based software company, Walgreens has the most efficiently organized plant for shipping items. I think it's in South Carolina, in the country, because it's run by people with autism. They have a system that is practically flawless, and they get their work done because Walgreens, SAP, Microsoft, these companies have seen the gifts and the potential and the possibilities that people with autism bring to the table. Yes, there's some problems and some perils possibly, but focusing more on the potential and the possibilities is what gets our young people employed. But our young people have to do their job too. And that's something that my mother and I have discovered over the years when working with the police. We expect the police to be experts on everything, just train them when there's a problem. But what did the young person not know that made that situation go south? We have to talk to young people too. And both parties, when they know what's expected of the other and they get introduced and they're no longer strangers, that's what leads to better outcomes.
And
has to apply for the employment world as well. And I do see another book in my future, From Accountant to Advocate. I'm going to share some job secrets of mine.
I like that.
Now on to you, Tucker. You wanted to say something?
I was just going to say that, yes, it is very true that the person, it is up to us to know what it is that we need so that we can work into the workplace. And like I said, I wear those noise-canceling headphones. I actually have them sitting here somewhere, but I can't see, so I can't find them. Anyway, but I noticed that in some places that people are so uneducated about people on the spectrum that like several situations I've been in, like for instance, what you heard me speak about in Vegas about what that woman said, and then how I was fired from my job because I had a panic attack and wasn't able to control that. Like, I was legitimately fired. Like, she came in there and my note said, the little write-up slip, that she came in there and told me to sign, had a write-up slip that said that I was disruptive and mentally incapable of working around others. And she wanted me to sign that, and I said no. And she said, well, it's fine either way. Here's your last check. And she fired me. But I also had, in other places I've worked in, I've seen where people you come in there and you say, okay, well, look, I am on the spectrum, and I'm not going to ask you to go out of your way, but just know if you see me do these certain things, it is because of this, or if it, and like for instance, one of the jobs I worked at several months ago, what I didn't want to talk to, like I would say hi or whatever to the other people there, but I wanted to do my job, and I didn't. I don't do good with small talk, and I don't care about what people did in foosball or whatever sport you want to.
Right.
It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
And I was being bothered by that, and the other employees went to my boss and was like, "Well, he's rude." And then my boss calls me in there, and she was like, "So what is the problem? What is there? You got an attitude problem with everybody or something?" And I'm like, "No, ma'am. I want to get my job done, and they want me to do small talk, and I don't know how to do small talk. It aggravates me. It distracts me from my work, and I can't get my job done." And she's like, "Well, you're just gonna have to deal with that. There's other people here. You got to be considerate of them." That's just part of it. I told her, and this is where she fired me. I said, "Ma'am, do you pay me to do my job, or do you pay me to chit chat about football?"
Excellent question.
Mm-hmm.
And she fired me.
Well, you know what? You're better off without that person or that organization in your life.
I agree.
Like, yeah, and that's why I'm unemployed. I've been unemployed for months because every time I go to a job, every single time, I have a panic attack because of something. It ends up being like a situation where people think that they can nitpick at you, and then when you defend yourself, you're the bad guy.
I know. Like when kids defend kids that are being bullied, the kid who's doing the defending is the one that gets suspended or expelled.
And the bully's fine. The bully don't get nothing.
Hitting the bully, it's like two wrongs don't make a right, but it's injustice that is making this world crumble and fall apart at the seams.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is.
Where you should come and educate. This is a perfect opportunity to bring awareness, raise awareness, and explain why you may act different, why you need certain space and certain, surrounding to do your job, why you cannot participate in the chit chat, in the break room, why you may not be a great team player, but you are great as a solo player doing your job to the perfection level.
And see, we're great team players as well, but the team has to work as a team and understand one another for it to work. That's why teams of people with autism, people on the spectrum, that's why they work so well together, because they understand, okay, well, that click, that twitch, that difference, that's part of it. That's part of getting through it. That's part of doing it. And a lot of times when you see someone on the spectrum working, it looks like that they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs and staring at the wall. But really, in their mind, they are taking the project, putting it as seeing it in their mind, ripping it apart and testing it in different ways. And then finally they come back to the table and they go, okay, this is what I got and this is how it's going to work. What do you think? And then people are like, well, you didn't do no work. You just sat over and stared at the wall. No, I did more work than all of you combined. But that's okay. Here we are now. But yeah, we are team players. We're just not team players with people who cannot understand how to be on our team. I guess you could say.
Makes sense.
What's your solution to educate those people? Because you cannot expect every company to have a small team of other people on the spectrum to work with you. You will face neurotypical, sometimes very ignorant individuals that you have to work with as a team. How can you raise awareness and educate them? What will be your approach?
That's a really good question. And I would say there are a couple of ground rules or a couple of rules of thumb, if you will, that would have to be set. Like you may have heard the idiom, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And First of all, who's getting cats? But the point is, there's more than one way to do things. Like, it's not always your way or the highway. And I mentioned, to be your best self, you are open to other people's opinions, suggestions, and considerations. And this includes at least hearing what they have to say, because you may, when you hear what someone else has to say, because 2 heads are better than 1, 4 heads are better than 2. Being open to what others have to say, so you may hear something that, oh, I never thought about that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Because if you close your eyes and your ears off to what others have to say, you are really missing out. So really open your mind, your heart, your eyes, your ears to what others have to bring to the table, and then you can see what can be done. And yes, there may be some I found this out from listening to Jack Canfield, the author of this Success Principles, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Nobody is 100% negative. Nobody's 100% negative. So see if you can think of or see one good positive quality in this person that's not so cooperative, and praise them, or say, I really like how on time you are all the time. You're so prompt. And they'll be like, well, thank you for pointing that out. And they'll start to be more prompt, more on time around you. So see the good qualities. See, I know there are a lot of gray clouds out there, but there is always a silver lining.
Yes.
That's something that we get through a lot of tough times. There's always some kind of element of optimism, something positive to come out of this, some kind of learning experience or some information I can take away from it. And that's really helped me in those difficult situations.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, a lot of times people aren't hateful to people on the spectrum or in the workplace because they're bad people. A lot of times they don't know that they're being that way. Like a lot of times they don't know what they are doing is detrimental to that person's state of mind or what their daily practices. I mean, like people, like for instance, women, the way women and men talk to each other as friends is completely different. Like for instance, a man, the people we care, the guys that we care the most about, like we will walk up and be like, dang man, have you gained 150 pounds, you fat sack of crap? How are you doing? Like,
no filter. No.
Yeah, women won't do that, and it's just like they might do that to each other, but it's like I know that everybody's got their own thing, but that's something you usually see in men. But you do that, and then with somebody on the spectrum, they might not catch that you're joking. Like me, I don't understand sarcasm. I had a guy tell me one time in the workplace, it was my boss, and I ended up almost getting fired over this. I did not get fired, but he called me up and almost fired me. We were sitting in the office, and he wants to know about me. He's just asking about me. And I shared something with him, and he said, man, get out of here. And I left. Like, and
taking things literally, that's very common in people with autism. That they hear it's raining cats and dogs, they're like, I want a puppy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. So a lot of times people don't know, because it's not every day you meet someone who doesn't get things like that. Because and to be honest, I don't know why we don't understand sarcasm. I personally I've actually studied the subject extensively, and I've never found a Tom actually might know the answer to the question, but I've never found a good explanation as to why we don't understand sarcasm other than we just think literally.
Okay, I have an answer for you, and my mother, bless her heart, has always been at least 2 steps ahead of the game. She wrote a book, and you want to write this down. It's called Drawing a Blank.
Drawing a Blank.
A Blank. It's available on Amazon. It's for improving comprehension for readers on the spectrum. Basically, really? My mother living with me is all my life, pretty much. She saw that my difficulty with reading comprehension and how I could read the words on the page, but I couldn't apply the meaning or answer the questions about the abstract concepts. Like, for instance, what color was the girl's dress? Yellow. That's so right there. Why do you think the author made the girl's dress yellow? Because he could.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing those abstract concepts, irony, or the emotional attachment, or how would you feel if you were in this situation? People with autism, their brain, the way it is, they have the facial blindness or other kinds of blindness where they can't picture if. And I actually said to my mom at one time, Mom, if it hasn't happened to me, my mind is a blank page. And that's what inspired her to write the book, Drawing a Blank, and get a master's in special ed and study extensively why people with autism can read the words but not understand the words. And when you don't understand what you read, you probably can't write a 5-paragraph essay or describe something, a what if. So that is one possible explanation, the way the brain works in autism and why their difficulty with reading comprehension contributes to their lack of ability to understand the sarcasm, the irony, the jokes, if you will, or idioms in particular. Oh, laundry's done.
Yeah.
Taking things literally in idioms. It's raining cats and dogs. They want to get that pet. So when you start to explore more, and there are books out there, like I think Amelia Bedelia was one of them, or some other big book of idioms. And I had to be taught about what these idioms meant and understand the context where they may apply. But people with autism and not picking up an experience with friends or hearing that term before, they become even more confused. And when they ask their friends or the people that are around it, they're like, what does that mean? They get bullied. Like, you don't know what that means?
Well, it's like street slang. Like, I don't know about you, bro, but oh my goodness, if I hear another person come up to me and they're like, bruh, you I don't even know any terms, but I'm just gonna make something up because apparently that's what they do. They'd be like, bro, you shacking today?
Oh my.
What? Like I had one dude be like, bro, you got so much swag. And I'm like, no, swag is a bouquet of roses with a bow tied around them. That is not. I don't own any roses, and I don't know how to tie a bow. So no, I don't have the swag you speak of. But I do hate to jump off here, but it is 1 o'clock high on the hour, and I have a very important thing that I have to do. So I am going to have to jump off of here. I do apologize for that, but I thank you so very much for having me on the show. And don't worry, Tom. Tom is an amazing guest, so he will be able to knock everything out from here. I promise you. And thank you so very much again. And Tom, it was a blessing to be on here with you.
Always a pleasure, Tucker.
Thank you so much.
All right, y'all have a good night. All right, bye-bye.
Bye. And we'll wrap it up here.
All right.
Tom, again, thank you so much for bringing all the information, and thank you for sharing the title of the book of your mom. I believe it's going to help a lot of people, and even young teenagers on the spectrum, to understand all the idioms and the sarcasm and everything that we're discussing here a lot better. So I appreciate you so much. Looking forward to covering up more stories from the spectrum with you, Tucker and Bradley, on our next Dream Team Hour. So thank you so much for coming to my show, and thank you for sharing with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Great day.
Bye.